Hello there, and welcome to the Psyche's Rest channel. Tonight, we're going to explore something truly remarkable. Something you're using right now in this very moment. As you listen to these words, and perhaps recall what you did earlier today, or remember a face you love, or know what the word memory means. Tonight, we're exploring memory itself. Not just what memory is, but how it works, where it lives in your brain, why it sometimes fails you, and the many different systems that work together to let you carry your past with you, learn from experience, and navigate the present. We'll discover that memory isn't one thing, but many systems working in concert. We'll learn about the brief flicker of sensory memory, the limited workspace of short-term memory, and the vast library of long-term memory. We'll explore the distinction between memories you can consciously recall and skills you perform without thinking. And we'll consider the fascinating truth that memory isn't a perfect recording, but a reconstruction constantly being shaped and reshaped by your present. As we wander through these ideas, you might find your breathing slowing, your body settling deeper into rest. That's perfectly fine. Let the concepts wash over you like gentle waves. There's no need to remember everything, which is fitting for a conversation about memory. Just allow yourself to be here, breathing softly, discovering these quiet mysteries of how your mind holds onto experience. If you enjoy these nighttime explorations, feel free to like and subscribe below. And if you have reflections to share, the comments are always open. But for now, simply settle in. Let your body relax wherever you're resting. Let your thoughts drift. And together, we'll explore the complete landscape of human memory. Let's begin. When psychologists first began studying memory scientifically, they noticed something interesting. Memory seemed to operate at different timescales. Some information persisted for less than a second. Other information lasted seconds or minutes. And still other information could last a lifetime. This observation led to one of the most influential models in memory research, proposed by Richard Atkinson and Richard Shiffrin in 1968. Atkinson and Shiffrin suggested that memory consists of 3 separate storage systems, each with its own characteristics, its own capacity, its own duration. These 3 systems are sensory memory, short-term memory, and long-term memory. And while subsequent research has revealed more complexity than this simple 3-stage model suggests, it remains a useful framework for understanding memory's basic architecture. Let's start at the very beginning, with sensory memory. Every moment, your senses are bombarded with information. Light patterns enter your eyes, sound waves reach your ears, pressure sensations touch your skin. All of this sensory information needs to be held somewhere, even if only briefly, for your brain to process it. Sensory memory is that initial holding place. It's a very brief storage system that holds sensory information for a fraction of a second to a couple of seconds at most. Each sense appears to have its own sensory memory. The visual system has what researchers call iconic memory, a fleeting visual trace that lasts about 250 milliseconds. The auditory system has echoic memory, which can last slightly longer, up to 3 or 4 seconds. These durations might seem almost too brief to matter, but sensory memory serves crucial functions. It allows the brain to hold on to sensory information long enough to decide what's important, what deserves further processing. It also creates the experience of perceptual continuity. When you watch a movie, you see a series of still images flashing by. Iconic memory helps create the illusion of smooth movement by bridging the gaps between frames. Most of what enters sensory memory fades immediately without any further processing. Your sensory systems are constantly receiving far more information than you could possibly attend to or remember. Sensory memory holds it all for that brief moment, and then it's gone unless something captures your attention. And that's where short-term memory comes in. When you pay attention to some part of the sensory information, when something captures your focus, it can move into short-term memory, sometimes called primary memory or active memory. This is your immediate conscious awareness, the small amount of information you're actively thinking about right now. Short-term memory has two defining characteristics that distinguish it from sensory memory. First, it lasts longer, somewhere between 15 and 30 seconds, if you don't actively maintain the information through rehearsal. Second, and perhaps more importantly, it has very limited capacity. In 1956, psychologist George Miller published a famous paper titled "The Magical Number 7 plus or minus 2. Miller proposed that short-term memory can hold about 7 items, give or take 2. This became one of the most cited findings in psychology. Whether you're trying to remember a phone number, a list of words, or a series of locations, you'll find that about 7 items is the limit of what you can actively hold in mind, though later research suggested Miller's estimate might have been slightly generous. Some contemporary psychologists believe the true capacity of short-term memory might be closer to 4 items, particularly for more complex information. But the general principle holds: short-term memory is remarkably limited. This limitation has profound implications. It means you can't think about many things at once. It means learning requires transferring information from this limited workspace into more permanent storage. And it means that if you're interrupted while trying to remember something, the information can be lost. You've probably experienced this. You hear a phone number and start repeating it to yourself, keeping it in short-term memory through rehearsal. But then someone asks you a question, and the number vanishes. Or you walk into a room to get something, get distracted by something else, and suddenly can't remember what you came for. These are the limitations of short-term memory in action. But when information in short-term memory receives sufficient processing, when it's rehearsed, elaborated on, connected to other knowledge, it can move into the third system, long-term memory. Long-term memory is everything you know and remember beyond the immediate moment. It includes memories from years ago, knowledge you learned in school, skills you've practiced, facts about the world, and the story of your life. Unlike sensory and short-term memory, long-term memory appears to have virtually unlimited capacity. Researchers have never found an upper limit to how much information the human brain can store over a lifetime. And unlike short-term memory's seconds or minutes, long-term memories can persist for years, decades, or even a lifetime. The process of moving information from short-term to long-term memory is called consolidation, and it's one of the most important processes in memory. We'll explore it in more depth later, but for now, the key point is that these 3 systems, sensory, short-term, and long-term work together to create your experience of memory. Sensory memory captures everything, holds it briefly. Attention selects what moves to short-term memory, where it becomes conscious and available for immediate use. And with further processing, the most important information moves into long-term memory, where it can be stored indefinitely and retrieved when needed. As you rest here, breathing slowly, you might notice these systems at work. Sensory memory is holding the sound of these words for that brief moment. Short-term memory is holding the meaning of the current sentence, letting you understand how the words connect. And long-term memory is providing all the background knowledge you need to make sense of what you're hearing, the meanings of words, the concepts we're discussing, memories of your own experiences with memory. All of this happens so seamlessly, so automatically, that you rarely notice the intricate choreography of different memory systems working in concert. But they're there. Quiet machinery that makes consciousness possible. While Atkinson and Shiffrin's three-stage model provided a useful framework, researchers soon realized that short-term memory was more complex than initially thought. It wasn't just a simple storage bin that held items for a few seconds. It was an active workspace where information could be manipulated, transformed, and combined. This led psychologists Alan Baddeley and Graham Hitch in 1974 to propose a more sophisticated model of what they called working memory. Working memory is essentially an updated conception of short-term memory, emphasizing its active nature and its role in complex cognitive tasks like reasoning, comprehension, and problem-solving. Baddeley's model, which has been refined over decades of research, proposes that working memory consists of multiple components, each handling different types of information. At the center is what's called the central executive, a supervisory system that controls attention, coordinates the other components, and manages the flow of information. The central executive is like the conductor of an orchestra, deciding which instruments play when, how loudly, and how they blend together. It's what allows you to focus on one thing while ignoring others, to switch between different tasks, to hold multiple pieces of information in mind while working on a problem. Supporting the central executive are what Baddeley called slave systems, specialized subsystems that handle specific types of information. The first is the phonological loop, which handles verbal and acoustic information. Whenever you're trying to remember a phone number, rehearse a list of words, or follow spoken directions, you're using your phonological loop. The phonological loop itself has two parts. There's a phonological store that holds sound-based information for a couple of seconds, and an articulatory rehearsal process that lets you refresh information by subvocally repeating it. When you repeat a phone number to yourself, that inner voice you hear is the articulatory rehearsal process, maintaining information in the phonological loop. Research suggests the phonological loop has a capacity equivalent to what you can say in about 2 seconds. This is why longer words are harder to remember than shorter words. If each word takes more time to articulate, fewer words fit within that 2-second span. Researchers call this the word length effect. The second slave system is the visuospatial sketchpad, which handles visual and spatial information. When you're trying to remember what someone looks like, navigate through a familiar building in your mind, or imagine how furniture might fit in a room, you're using your visuospatial sketchpad. Like the phonological loop, the visuospatial sketchpad allows you to temporarily hold and manipulate visual and spatial information. It's what lets you rotate objects in your mind, trace a route on a mental map, or maintain an image while working with it. Research has found that these two systems, the phonological loop and visuospatial sketchpad, can operate somewhat independently. You can hold verbal information in the phonological loop while simultaneously processing visual information in the visuospatial sketchpad, and neither task interferes much with the other. But if you try to do two verbal tasks at once, or two visual tasks, they compete for the same resources and performance suffers. Later, in 2000, Baddeley added a fourth component to the model, the episodic buffer. The episodic buffer is a limited capacity system that can hold information from different sources, binding together information from the phonological loop, visuospatial sketchpad, and long-term memory into coherent episodes or scenes. It's what allows you to combine what you're seeing, hearing, and remembering into a unified experience. This working memory system, with its multiple components, is crucial for almost every cognitive task you perform. Reading comprehension requires holding earlier parts of a sentence in mind while processing later parts. Mental arithmetic requires maintaining numbers and operations. Following directions requires holding the steps in sequence. Problem solving requires manipulating information and considering alternatives. And working memory capacity varies considerably between individuals. Some people have larger working memory capacity than others, and this variation appears to be related to performance on a wide range of cognitive tasks, including reasoning, comprehension, and even academic achievement. In a sense, working memory is the mental workspace where thinking happens, and having a larger workspace provides advantages. But everyone's working memory is limited. Even people with high capacity can only hold a handful of items at once. This limitation is one of the fundamental constraints of human cognition. It's why we take notes, why we break complex problems into smaller steps, why we need to focus attention rather than trying to think about everything at once. As you lie here, your working memory is actively processing these ideas. The central executive is directing your attention to the sounds you're hearing and the meanings they convey. The phonological loop might be holding the current sentence, and perhaps the episodic buffer is integrating what you're hearing with your own memories and experiences of memory, creating a richer understanding. But as you drift towards sleep, working memory gradually releases its hold. The active maintenance fades. And that's perfectly fine. You don't need to hold on to these ideas tightly. They're here if you want to explore them, and they'll settle gently into long-term memory, ready to be revisited whenever you choose. When we turn our attention to long-term memory, that vast storehouse of everything you know and remember beyond the immediate moment, we encounter another important distinction. Not all long-term memories are the same. They differ not just in content, but in how they're accessed, where they're stored in the brain, and even whether you're consciously aware of them. One of the most fundamental distinctions in long-term memory is between explicit and implicit memory, also called declarative and non-declarative memory. This distinction matters because it reveals that much of what you remember doesn't feel like remembering at all. Explicit memory is memory for information that you can consciously recall and declare, that you can put into words and deliberately bring to mind. It includes facts you know, events you remember, concepts you understand. When you recall what you had for breakfast, remember a childhood birthday party, or state the capital of France, you're using explicit memory. Implicit memory, by contrast, is memory that influences your behavior without conscious awareness. It includes skills you've learned, habits you've formed, and subtle influences on how you perceive and respond to the world. When you ride a bicycle, type on a keyboard, or feel more positively towards something you've been exposed to before, you're expressing implicit memory even though you might not consciously remember learning these things. The distinction between explicit and implicit memory isn't just conceptual. It's supported by strong neurological evidence. These two types of memory depend on different brain systems and can be dissociated from each other. Explicit memory relies heavily on structures in the medial temporal lobe, particularly the hippocampus and surrounding cortices. When the hippocampus is damaged, as it is in various forms of amnesia, explicit memory is severely impaired. People with hippocampal damage struggle to form new explicit memories. They can't remember events from day to day, can't learn new facts, can't recall conversations or experiences. But remarkably, implicit memory remains largely intact, even with severe hippocampal damage. This was first documented in a famous patient known as H.M., who had both hippocampi removed to treat severe epilepsy. After the surgery, H.M. could no longer form new explicit memories. He couldn't remember meeting someone moments after they left the room. Every day felt like the first time. Yet, H.M. could still learn new motor skills. In one study, he practiced a mirror tracing task, where you trace a shape while only seeing your hand in a mirror. This is a challenging task that requires practice. Over several days, H.M.'s performance steadily improved, clear evidence of learning. But each day, he had no explicit memory of having done the task before. His implicit motor memory was intact, even though his explicit memory was destroyed. This dissociation reveals that implicit memory relies on different brain systems. Procedural memory, the learning of skills and habits, appears to depend more on the basal ganglia and cerebellum than on the hippocampus. Other forms of implicit memory, like emotional conditioning, involve the amygdala. Still others, like priming effects, may involve changes in cortical processing regions. In your daily life, implicit memory is constantly at work, shaping behavior in ways you're rarely aware of. Every skill you've mastered, from walking to speaking to more specialized abilities, is stored as implicit memory. You don't consciously remember how to form each word when you speak or how to coordinate your muscles when you walk. You just do it, guided by implicit memories formed through years of practice. Implicit memory also influences your preferences and feelings. If you've been repeatedly exposed to something, you're likely to feel more positively toward it, even if you don't remember the exposures. Researchers call this the mere exposure effect. Your implicit memory has recorded the familiarity, and familiarity breeds liking, all without conscious awareness. This distinction between explicit and implicit memory reminds us that memory is not monolithic. You're constantly using multiple memory systems, some conscious and some unconscious, some declarative and some expressed only through action. And these systems can operate independently, creating the interesting situation where you can know things without knowing that you know them, where your behavior reflects learning that never enters conscious awareness. Within explicit memory, within that realm of conscious recollection, there's another important distinction, one proposed by psychologist Endel Tulving in 1972. Tulving distinguished between episodic memory and semantic memory, two types of explicit, long-term memory that serve different functions. Episodic memory is memory for specific events or episodes from your personal past. It's the memory that allows you to mentally travel back in time, to re-experience moments from your life. When you remember your high school graduation, a conversation you had last week, or what you were doing when you heard important news, you're accessing episodic memory. Episodic memories are richly detailed and contextual. They include not just what happened, but when and where it happened, who was there, what you saw and heard, how you felt. They're anchored in a specific time and place. You remember not just that something happened, but that it happened to you at a particular moment in your personal history. Semantic memory, by contrast, is memory for general knowledge and facts about the world. It's what allows you to know that Paris is in France, that dogs are animals, that ice is cold, that 2 + 2 = 4. Semantic memories are not tied to a specific episode of learning. You know these facts, but you probably can't remember exactly when or where you learned them. Tulving's distinction highlights something important. Explicit memory includes both the story of your life and your knowledge about the world, and these are psychologically and neurologically distinguishable. Though related, episodic and semantic memory serve different functions and have somewhat different properties. Episodic memory gives you a sense of personal continuity, a feeling that you're the same person who experienced events in the past. It's crucial for what researchers call autobiographical memory, the coherent narrative you construct about your own life. Without episodic memory, you'd lose that sense of having a personal history. Semantic memory provides the conceptual framework you use to understand the world. It's the accumulated knowledge that lets you recognize objects, understand language, make inferences, and think about things that aren't immediately present. It's more abstract, more generalized than episodic memory, but equally essential. Interestingly, many memories have both episodic and semantic components. You might remember the semantic fact that you visited a particular city, but also have episodic memories of specific moments during that visit. Over time, some researchers believe episodic memories can become semanticized. You remember that something happened, but you lose the rich contextual details that made it feel like re-experiencing the event. Think about memories from your childhood. Some might still feel episodic, vivid moments you can mentally re-enter. Others might be more semantic, facts about your childhood that you know are true but can't really remember experiencing. I lived in that house becomes semantic knowledge even though it was originally episodic experience. The relationship between episodic and semantic memory remains an active area of research. Some theorists believe they're distinct systems. Others suggest they're different expressions of a common underlying memory system, distinguished more by how information is accessed than by where it's stored. Recent work suggests they're interdependent, with semantic memory providing the scaffolding on which episodic memories are built, and episodic experiences gradually contributing to semantic knowledge. Research using brain imaging has found that episodic and semantic memory activate overlapping but somewhat different brain regions. Both rely on the hippocampus and surrounding medial temporal lobe structures. But episodic memory appears to involve more extensive connections to other brain regions, particularly areas involved in mental imagery and self-referential thinking. This makes sense given that episodic memory involves rich, multisensory re-experiencing. As you rest here, you might notice both types of memory at work. Semantic memory is providing the meanings of these words, the concepts we're discussing, general knowledge about memory itself, and perhaps episodic memory is bringing to mind specific moments from your past, times when memories served you well or failed you, personal experiences that the discussion is calling forth. Both are part of the rich tapestry of explicit memory, that remarkable ability to consciously access knowledge and experience, to know facts and remember moments, to carry the past forward into the present. Memory isn't a single event, but a process that unfolds over time, involving multiple stages. Psychologists typically describe memory as involving three key processes: encoding, storage, and retrieval. Understanding these processes helps illuminate how memory works and why it sometimes fails. Encoding is the first stage, the process of transforming sensory input into a form that can be stored in memory. Not everything you experience is encoded. In fact, most sensory information never makes it past sensory memory. Encoding requires attention and processing. You have to notice something and think about it, connect it to other knowledge, for it to be encoded into long-term memory. The depth and nature of encoding profoundly affects how well information will be remembered. Shallow encoding, like simply repeating something without thinking about its meaning, produces weak memory traces. Deeper encoding, like thinking about what something means, how it relates to other knowledge, or how it connects to your own experience, produces much stronger memories. Researchers have identified several principles that enhance encoding. One is elaborative rehearsal, where you think about information in meaningful ways rather than just repeating it. Another is the self-reference effect, where information related to yourself is encoded particularly well. Yet another is distinctiveness, where unusual or distinctive information is encoded more strongly than common information. Imagery also enhances encoding. When you create a mental image of something, you encode it both verbally and visually, creating multiple retrieval pathways. This is why memory techniques often involve creating vivid, sometimes bizarre, mental images. The more elaborate and distinctive the encoding, the more likely the information is to be remembered later. Once information is encoded, it moves into the storage stage. This is where consolidation happens, the process by which newly encoded memories are stabilized and integrated into long-term memory. Consolidation takes time and involves complex changes at both the cellular level, with proteins being synthesized and synapses being strengthened, and at the systems level, with memories initially dependent on the hippocampus, gradually becoming more distributed across cortical regions. Research suggests consolidation continues long after the initial learning experience, sometimes for days, months, or even years. During this time, memories are vulnerable. They can be disrupted by interference from similar information, by trauma, or by substances that interfere with protein synthesis. But once fully consolidated, memories become more stable, though never entirely fixed. Sleep plays a crucial role in memory consolidation, something we'll explore more deeply later. But for now, it's worth noting that many studies have found that sleep after learning enhances memory, likely because sleep provides an ideal time for consolidation processes to occur without interference from new incoming information. The third process is retrieval, the process of accessing stored information when you need it. Retrieval is not like reading a file off a hard drive. It's an active reconstruction that depends heavily on retrieval cues, hints, or prompts that help activate the memory. One of the most important principles of retrieval is encoding specificity, proposed by Tulving in the 1970 seconds. The encoding specificity principle states that memory is best when the conditions at retrieval match the conditions at encoding. Context matters. If you learn something in a particular environment or state, you remember it better when you're in that same environment or state. This explains why going back to a place can trigger memories, why music from a particular time in your life brings back memories from that period, why mood affects what you remember. The context provides retrieval cues that help reactivate the memory. Another important retrieval phenomenon is the tip of the tongue state, that frustrating experience where you know something but can't quite retrieve it. You might remember aspects of the word, like its first letter or how many syllables it has, but the full memory eludes you. This demonstrates that retrieval is a process, that partial information can be accessed even when full retrieval fails. Retrieval itself can change memories. Every time you retrieve a memory, you're not just accessing it, but reconsolidating it, potentially incorporating new information or altering details. This is why memories can change over time, becoming distorted or embellished. Retrieval is not a neutral process. It's an active reconstruction that can reshape what's remembered. The three processes, encoding, storage, and retrieval, work together to create your experience of remembering. Failures at any stage result in forgetting. Information not encoded is never remembered. Information poorly consolidated may fade. And information not successfully retrieved might as well not exist, even though it's stored somewhere in your brain. Understanding these processes has practical implications. If you want to remember something, focus on encoding. Process information deeply, connect it to what you know, create meaningful associations. Support consolidation by allowing time for memories to stabilize, particularly through sleep. And facilitate retrieval by creating cues, by linking new information to contexts you'll have access to later, by practicing retrieval itself through testing or active recall. Memory is not a single place in the brain, but a distributed process involving multiple brain regions working in concert. However, certain structures play particularly crucial roles, and understanding where memory happens helps illuminate how it works. The most famous brain region involved in memory is the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped structure located deep in the medial temporal lobe, one on each side of the brain. The hippocampus and surrounding structures are critical for forming new explicit memories, particularly episodic memories. The importance of the hippocampus was first dramatically demonstrated by patient H.M., whom we mentioned earlier. After losing his hippocampi, H.M. could no longer form new long-term explicit memories. He could remember his life before the surgery, suggesting those memories were stored elsewhere, but new experiences didn't consolidate into lasting memories. Every day, everyone was a stranger. Every task was new. Research since then has revealed much about how the hippocampus supports memory. It appears to act as a hub, binding together distributed cortical representations into coherent memories. When you experience an event, different features are processed in different cortical regions. Visual aspects are processed in visual cortex, sounds in auditory cortex, emotional aspects in the amygdala, and so on. The hippocampus links these distributed representations together, creating a bound memory of the unified experience. The hippocampus is particularly important during initial learning and consolidation. Over time, through a process called systems consolidation, memories become less dependent on the hippocampus and more distributed across cortical regions. This may be why H.M. retained memories from before his surgery. They had already been consolidated and stored in cortical regions. Different subregions within the hippocampus and surrounding medial temporal lobe structures appear to play different roles. The dentate gyrus, one subregion, may be involved in pattern separation, keeping similar memories distinct. The CA3 region may support pattern completion, allowing partial cues to retrieve complete memories. The CA1 region appears crucial for integrating information. These technical details matter less than the general principle. The hippocampus is a complex structure with multiple functions, all supporting memory formation. Beyond the hippocampus, the prefrontal cortex plays crucial roles in working memory and in organizing, controlling, and retrieving long-term memories. When you're actively maintaining information, making decisions, or searching through memory for something, your prefrontal cortex is heavily involved. The amygdala, an almond-shaped structure adjacent to the hippocampus, is central to emotional memory. Emotional events are often remembered particularly vividly, sometimes too vividly in the case of traumatic memories. The amygdala modulates memory consolidation based on emotional significance. When something is emotionally arousing, the amygdala enhances hippocampal consolidation, making the memory stronger. For implicit memory, particularly procedural memory and skill learning, different brain structures are important. The basal ganglia, a group of structures deep in the brain, are crucial for learning motor skills and habits. The cerebellum, at the back of the brain, is also involved in motor learning and coordination. These structures allow you to learn skills that become automatic, performed without conscious thought. Recent research has introduced the concept of engram neurons, specific populations of neurons that encode and store individual memories. When you experience an event, certain neurons become active and form connections with each other. Later, reactivating those same neurons can trigger recall of the memory. Engram neurons have been identified in multiple brain regions, including the hippocampus, cortex, and amygdala. Remarkably, researchers have been able to artificially reactivate engram neurons in animals using optogenetics, a technique that uses light to control neuron activity, and this reactivation triggers behavioral responses consistent with the animals remembering specific experiences. This provides compelling evidence that memories are physically instantiated in patterns of neural connectivity. The distributed nature of memory storage explains several things. It explains why brain damage rarely wipes out specific memories completely. If memories are stored across multiple regions, partial damage may impair memory generally, but rarely eliminates specific memories. It also explains why retrieval can feel like reconstructing an experience. You're reactivating distributed patterns of neural activity across multiple brain regions, and these patterns recreate the experience. As you rest here, breathing gently, these very brain regions are at work. Your hippocampus is quietly processing today's experiences, beginning the consolidation that will continue during sleep. Your prefrontal cortex is following these ideas, perhaps occasionally searching through long-term memory to connect new information with what you already know. And your various cortical regions are storing the distributed representations that together constitute your memories. It's remarkable to think that your subjective experience of memory, that feeling of looking back into the past, emerges from patterns of electrical and chemical activity across these biological structures. Neurons firing, synapses transmitting signals, networks of cells lighting up in patterns established by experience. Yet somehow, from this biological machinery emerges the rich phenomenology of remembering, the feeling of traveling back in time, the vivid re-experiencing of moments long past. We often think of memory as a recording, like a video camera faithfully capturing events as they occur. We trust our memories, especially vivid ones, as accurate reflections of what actually happened. But decades of research have revealed something quite different. Memory is not a recording, but a reconstruction, and that reconstruction is far more fragile and malleable than most people realize. The psychologist who has done perhaps more than anyone to reveal memory's reconstructive nature is Elizabeth Loftus. Since the 1970 seconds, Loftus has conducted groundbreaking research on false memories, the misinformation effect, and eyewitness testimony, research that has transformed how we understand memory and its reliability. In one of her most famous early experiments, Loftus showed participants videos of traffic accidents. Later, she asked participants questions about what they saw. But here's what was crucial. She varied the wording of the questions. Some participants were asked how fast were the cars going when they hit each other. Others were asked how fast were the cars going when they smashed into each other. That single word change affected participants' speed estimates. Those who heard smashed estimated higher speeds than those who heard hit. But more remarkably, a week later, participants who heard smashed were more likely to report having seen broken glass in the video, even though there was no broken glass. The wording of a question after the fact had altered participants' memories of what they witnessed. This phenomenon, which Loftus called the misinformation effect, has been replicated hundreds of times with various types of misleading information. People can be led to remember details that weren't present, misremember central features of events, and even develop entirely false memories of events that never occurred. In another striking series of studies, Loftus demonstrated that people could be led to develop detailed false memories of childhood events. In what's become known as the Lost in the Mall study, participants were told about several childhood events, some true and one false, that their family members had supposedly reported. The false event involved getting lost in a shopping mall. Despite this never having happened, about 25% of participants came to remember being lost in the mall, often recalling vivid details about the experience. These false memories weren't just intellectual beliefs. Participants experienced them as memories, complete with emotional reactions and sensory details. They felt like they were recalling actual events from childhood, even though those events never occurred. How is this possible? How can memory be so unreliable? The answer lies in memory's reconstructive nature. When you remember something, you're not pulling up a stored recording. You're reconstructing the memory from fragments, bits of stored information that you piece together into a coherent narrative. And during this reconstruction, various influences can alter what you remember. Your current knowledge and beliefs can shape how you reconstruct past events. Your expectations can fill in gaps with what seems plausible. Information you encountered after an event can blend with the original memory. And suggestions, whether subtle or direct, can introduce elements that weren't present. Moreover, every time you retrieve a memory, you're not just accessing it, but potentially altering it through reconsolidation. Memories become malleable when retrieved, open to incorporating new information, and then reconsolidate in their updated form. This means memories can change gradually over time, each retrieval potentially introducing small alterations. This doesn't mean all memories are false, or that memory is completely unreliable. Most memories, most of the time, are reasonably accurate, at least in their general outlines. But the details can be unreliable. The exact words someone said, the precise sequence of events, specific perceptual details, these can all be distorted or fabricated without any conscious awareness that you're misremembering. Certain factors make memories particularly susceptible to distortion. Stressful or traumatic events can be remembered vividly but not necessarily accurately. The stress response affects encoding and consolidation in complex ways. Childhood memories are especially unreliable, partly because the memory systems aren't fully developed, and partly because childhood memories are subject to decades of reconstruction. Source monitoring errors are also common. You remember information but misattribute its source. You think you saw something when you actually heard about it. You believe you experienced something when you actually just imagined it vividly. The memory feels real, but its source is misidentified. Loftus's research has had profound practical implications, particularly for eyewitness testimony in legal settings. Eyewitnesses are often highly confident in their memories, and juries find confident testimony persuasive. But research shows confidence is not a good predictor of accuracy. People can be completely confident in memories that are completely wrong. This is sobering. It means you can't always trust even your most vivid, confident memories. It means memory's constructive nature is both a strength, allowing flexible reconstruction and integration of new information, and a vulnerability, opening the door to distortion and falsification. Understanding memory's reconstructive nature can be unsettling. It challenges the intuitive sense that your memories are true records of your past. But it can also be freeing. It means you're not bound by memory. The narrative you construct about your past can be revised, reinterpreted, and it encourages humility about certainty, recognizing that what you remember, even if it feels absolutely true, might not match what actually happened. Every night, for roughly a third of your life, you enter a state that seems, on the surface, like a shutdown of consciousness. But far from being a passive period of rest, sleep is an active, crucial time for memory. Over the past few decades, research has revealed that sleep isn't just friendly to memory, it's essential for it. The relationship between sleep and memory has been studied extensively, and while many questions remain, several clear findings have emerged. The most fundamental is that sleep after learning enhances memory. Compared to equivalent periods of wakefulness, sleep improves memory consolidation across many types of information. But sleep isn't a uniform state. It consists of multiple stages, each with distinct brain activity patterns, and different stages appear to support memory consolidation in different ways. Sleep cycles between non-REM sleep, which includes lighter stages, and deep slow-wave sleep, and REM sleep, the stage associated with vivid dreams. Slow-wave sleep, the deepest stage of non-REM sleep, appears particularly important for declarative memory, the explicit memory for facts and events. During slow-wave sleep, the brain shows characteristic slow oscillations, synchronized waves of neural activity. These slow oscillations appear to support the transfer of information from the hippocampus, where memories are initially encoded, to cortical regions for long-term storage, that system's consolidation process we mentioned earlier. Studies have found that disrupting slow-wave sleep impairs memory consolidation, while enhancing slow-wave sleep through various techniques can improve it. The slow oscillations may provide a rhythm that coordinates the replay of memories, strengthening the connections that represent those memories in distributed cortical networks. REM sleep, the stage where most vivid dreams occur, also supports memory, though perhaps in different ways. Research suggests REM sleep may be particularly important for procedural memory, the learning of skills and procedures. It may also play a role in processing emotional memories and in creative problem solving. During REM sleep, the brain is highly active, almost as active as during wakefulness, but muscle tone is lost, preventing you from acting out dreams. Neurotransmitter levels shift, creating a unique neurochemical environment. Some researchers believe this environment may be optimal for certain types of memory reorganization and integration. Interestingly, research has found that dreaming itself may reflect memory processing. When people learn a complex spatial task before sleep, those who dream about the task show better improvement than those who don't. The dreams don't replay the task exactly. Instead, they seem to reflect the brain's attempt to integrate the new learning with existing knowledge, working through the task at a more abstract level. Studies using neuroimaging have provided direct evidence that memories are replayed during sleep. When animals learn a spatial task, specific patterns of neurons fire in sequence as they navigate. During subsequent sleep, these same patterns are reactivated, sometimes in compressed or modified form. This neuroreplay appears to strengthen the memories, improving performance when the animals are tested later. Similar replay has been found in humans. Brain regions active during learning become active again during sleep, and the extent of this reactivation predicts how well the information is remembered. Sleep seems to provide a quiet period, free from external input, when the brain can process the day's experiences, extracting patterns, integrating new information with old, and strengthening the neural connections that represent memories. The benefits of sleep for memory are robust and practically significant. Students who sleep after studying remember information better than those who stay up studying more. Naps, even short ones, can enhance memory, and chronic sleep deprivation impairs memory formation, making it harder to learn new information and consolidate it into long-term memory. The mechanisms underlying sleep's memory benefits are still being uncovered. Beyond replay and systems consolidation, sleep may also clear metabolic waste products that accumulate during wakefulness, restore depleted cellular resources, and reset neural circuits to optimal states for new learning. Sleep appears to be a time of active brain housekeeping, maintaining the systems that support memory. As you lie here, perhaps beginning to drift towards sleep, these very processes are preparing to engage. Your brain is readying itself for the night's work of memory consolidation. Experiences from today will be replayed, processed, integrated. Skills you practiced will be refined. And in the morning, if all goes well, you'll wake with memories stabilized, ready for a new day of learning and experience. Sleep and memory are intimately linked partners in the ongoing construction of your mental life. And this partnership reminds us that memory isn't confined to conscious waking hours. Some of memory's most important work happens in the darkness, in the quiet hours when you're not even aware of it occurring. Given what we now know about how memory works, encoding, consolidation, retrieval, reconstruction, a natural question arises. Can memory be enhanced? Can we remember better through intentional strategies and techniques? The answer is yes, though with some caveats. Memory can be improved through evidence-based techniques, but there are no magic bullets. Memory enhancement requires effort, practice, and often contextual application. What works in a laboratory might not transfer perfectly to everyday life. Nonetheless, research has identified several strategies that reliably improve memory when applied appropriately. One of the oldest and most effective techniques involves mnemonic devices, memory aids that help encode information in more memorable ways. The word mnemonic comes from the Greek goddess Mnemosyne, the personification of memory. Mnemonic devices work by providing organization, creating meaningful connections, or using distinctive imagery to make information easier to encode and retrieve. One classic mnemonic is the method of loci, also called the memory palace technique. This ancient technique, reportedly used by Greek orators to remember long speeches, involves associating information with specific locations in a familiar environment. You imagine walking through your house, for example, and placing items to be remembered at specific locations along your path. Later, mentally retracing the path allows you to retrieve the items in order. The method of loci is remarkably effective. Studies show it can dramatically improve memory for ordered lists. The technique works because it provides structure, uses spatial memory, which is generally strong, and encourages vivid interactive imagery. When you imagine placing a giant banana on your couch, that distinctive, bizarre image is much more memorable than just the word banana. Another powerful mnemonic is creating acronyms or acrostics, where the first letter of each item to be remembered forms a word or sentence. Students learn, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, to remember the order of operations in mathematics, or every good boy does fine to remember musical notes. These work by chunking information and providing retrieval cues. Visual imagery in general enhances memory. When you create a mental image of something, you encode it both verbally and visually, creating dual pathways for retrieval. The more vivid, unusual, and interactive the imagery, the better. Ordinary images are less effective than bizarre ones. A dog sitting normally is less memorable than a dog riding a bicycle while wearing a hat. Beyond specific mnemonic devices, several general encoding strategies improve memory. Elaborative rehearsal, thinking deeply about meaning and connections, works far better than simple repetition. When you relate new information to what you already know, when you ask yourself why something makes sense or how it connects to other knowledge, you create richer, more retrievable memory traces. The self-reference effect suggests that relating information to yourself enhances memory. If you think about how new information applies to your own life, connects to your experiences, or matters to you personally, you'll remember it better than if you process it more impersonally. Self-referential processing creates privileged encoding. Distributed practice, spreading learning over time rather than cramming, is one of the most robust findings in memory research. The spacing effect demonstrates that information studied in multiple sessions separated by time is remembered better than the same amount of study massed in a single session. Even short breaks between study sessions can be beneficial. The optimal spacing depends on how long you need to remember something, but some spacing almost always outperforms cramming. Testing yourself, what's called retrieval practice or the testing effect, also powerfully enhances memory. It might seem that repeatedly studying information would be more effective than testing yourself, but research consistently finds the opposite. The act of retrieving information strengthens memory more than additional studying. This is why flashcards, practice problems, and self-quizzing are so effective. Encoding specificity suggests matching study conditions to test conditions when possible. If you'll need to recall information in a particular environment or state, studying in similar conditions can help. While you can't always control context, being aware of encoding specificity can sometimes allow strategic choices about where and how to study. Sleep, as we've already discussed, should be considered a memory enhancement technique. Ensuring adequate sleep after learning isn't a passive process, it's an active contribution to consolidation. Planning sleep after important learning, avoiding all-nighters, and recognizing sleep's role in memory are practical strategies. It's important to note that memory improvement techniques require effort. They work when applied, but applying them takes time and practice. Simply knowing about them doesn't automatically improve memory. You have to actually use the method of loci, actually create vivid imagery, actually space practice, actually test yourself. Moreover, techniques that work for one type of information might not work for another. Mnemonics are great for lists, but less useful for understanding complex concepts. Vivid imagery helps with concrete information, but is harder with abstract ideas. Effective memory enhancement requires choosing appropriate techniques for the specific learning goals. But within these limitations, memory can genuinely be improved. When appropriate techniques are applied with effort and practice, memory performance can increase substantially. This is empowering. It means you're not stuck with your current memory capacity. With understanding and application, you can remember more effectively. Memory is not static across the human lifespan. It changes, developing in childhood, reaching peak efficiency in early adulthood, and gradually shifting with aging. Understanding these developmental patterns can provide perspective on memory's nature and on how to maintain memory health throughout life. In infancy and early childhood, memory systems are still developing. Young children have remarkable learning abilities in some domains, but limited explicit memory for specific events. Most people have few or no memories from before age 3 or 4, a phenomenon called childhood amnesia. This likely reflects the fact that the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, crucial for explicit memory, are still maturing during early childhood. As children grow, memory capacity expands dramatically. Working memory capacity increases, allowing more information to be held and manipulated. Long-term memory becomes richer and more organized. Children develop increasingly sophisticated strategies for encoding and retrieval. By adolescence, most memory systems are approaching adult-like functioning, though some brain regions, particularly prefrontal cortex, continue developing into the mid-20s. Early adulthood, roughly from the 20s through the 40s, appears to represent peak memory performance for many types of memory. Working memory capacity is high. Processing speed is fast. Both encoding and retrieval are efficient. This is when most people perform best on memory tests and when memory feels most effortless in daily life. But even during these peak years, memory is not perfect. Everyone experiences occasional forgetting, tip-of-the-tongue states, and source monitoring errors. Normal memory has always been imperfect, characterized by both impressive capacity and frequent failures. As people age past middle adulthood, memory begins to change. These changes are highly variable between individuals, but some patterns are common. Processing speed tends to slow. Working memory capacity may decrease slightly, and episodic memory, particularly for recent events, often becomes less reliable. However, it's important to distinguish between normal age-related memory changes and pathological decline. Normal aging doesn't typically involve severe memory loss. Most older adults maintain good memory function for everyday tasks, even if they're slower or less efficient than when younger. Forgetting where you put your keys is normal at any age. Forgetting what keys are for would be concerning. Certain types of memory are more affected by aging than others. Episodic memory, especially for arbitrary associations, tends to decline. Semantic memory, accumulated knowledge, often remains stable or even improves as people continue learning throughout life. Procedural memory, skill learning, is relatively preserved, and implicit memory generally shows less decline than explicit memory. Research has identified several factors that may help maintain memory function with aging. Physical exercise appears protective, possibly through effects on blood flow, neurogenesis, and overall brain health. Mental stimulation and continued learning may also be beneficial, though the specific mechanisms are still being investigated. Social engagement, maintaining relationships and connections, correlates with better cognitive function. And managing cardiovascular risk factors like hypertension and diabetes appears important, as these conditions can affect brain health. Sleep remains crucial throughout life. Poor sleep quality can contribute to memory problems at any age, but may be particularly important in older adulthood. Addressing sleep disturbances, maintaining regular sleep schedules, and ensuring adequate sleep duration can support memory function. Stress management also matters. Chronic stress and elevated cortisol levels can impair memory, particularly affecting the hippocampus. While some stress is inevitable, finding ways to manage stress effectively through relaxation techniques, social support, or other means may help protect memory. Perspective matters as well. Worrying excessively about normal memory lapses can create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Anxiety about memory can impair memory performance. Maintaining realistic expectations, recognizing that everyone forgets sometimes, and not catastrophizing occasional memory failures can reduce this anxiety effect. Memory across the lifespan is a story of change, growth, peak function, and gradual transformation. Understanding this trajectory can foster patience with childhood learning, appreciation for peak adult memory, and realistic expectations about aging. Memory changes, but with appropriate support and strategies, it can serve us well throughout life. As the night deepens and your thoughts begin to drift, let's gather together what we've explored. Memory, that remarkable capacity that defines so much of who you are, is not one thing but many systems working in concert. We've traveled through the three-stage model, from the fleeting flicker of sensory memory, through the limited workspace of short-term memory, to the vast storehouse of long-term memory. We've explored working memory's components: the phonological loop, visuospatial sketchpad, central executive, and episodic buffer, working together to create your mental workspace. We've discovered that long-term memory divides into explicit and implicit systems, into memories you consciously recall and skills expressed through action. Within explicit memory, we found episodic memories of personal experience and semantic memories of general knowledge, both essential but distinct. We've learned that memory unfolds through encoding, storage, and retrieval, three processes that transform experience into lasting traces and bring those traces back into consciousness when needed. We've seen where memory lives in the brain: the hippocampus binding distributed representations, the prefrontal cortex organizing and controlling, the amygdala adding emotional significance. We've confronted memory's fragility, its reconstructive nature, the work of Elizabeth Loftus revealing how easily memories can be distorted, how confidence doesn't guarantee accuracy, how what we remember isn't always what actually happened. We've explored sleep's crucial role, how slow-wave sleep and REM sleep support consolidation, how the brain replays and processes experiences during the night, how sleep isn't rest from memory, but active work for it. And we've considered how memory can be enhanced through evidence-based strategies, mnemonic devices, elaborative rehearsal, distributed practice, and testing. We've acknowledged memory's changes across the lifespan, its development in childhood, peak in early adulthood, and transformation with aging. All of this reveals memory's complexity. It's not a single capacity, but a collection of systems. It's not a recording, but a reconstruction. It's not fixed, but plastic. It's not perfect, but functional. And it's not isolated in the brain, but distributed across regions, emerging from patterns of neural activity that somehow create the subjective experience of remembering. What does this mean for you, for your own relationship with memory? Perhaps it invites appreciation for memory's everyday miracles, the seamless way it usually serves you. Perhaps it encourages patience with memory's failures, recognizing that imperfection is built into the system. Perhaps it suggests strategies for learning more effectively, for supporting consolidation through sleep, for approaching memory with understanding rather than frustration. And perhaps it invites wonder, that you can remember at all, that patterns of electricity and chemistry in biological tissue can preserve experience, can let you carry the past forward, can give you a sense of personal continuity across time. This is extraordinary. The Complete Guide to Human Memory is ultimately a guide to one of nature's most remarkable achievements, the biological basis of personal history and accumulated knowledge. For now, let these ideas rest. Let them settle into your own memory systems, encoding through this listening, ready to be consolidated during sleep, available for retrieval when you need them. The details may fade, as details do, but perhaps the general understanding will remain, a semantic memory of memory itself. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of human memory. If you found this journey through memory systems calming and would like to rest with more ideas about the mind, feel free to subscribe and return whenever you need a gentle companion for sleep. Let your awareness soften now. Let the concepts dissolve. Let your breathing slow into sleep's rhythm. Memory will continue its work without you, processing, consolidating, preparing for tomorrow. But right now, you can simply rest, held by the remarkable capacity that lets you be you, that carries your past and shapes your future, the quiet marvel of human memory. Sleep well, rest deeply, and good night.